We are 5 days away from round one of the NFL draft. What will the Jets do? Will they select Brock Bowers? Will they trade back? Will they even trade up? Or will they stay at 10? Joe Douglas recently spoke to the media, so we'll talk about that and much more in today's version of NY Flight Jets Talk. My guest is Antwan Staley, Jets beat writer for the New York Daily News. Let's roll.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today?
ESPN writer, Mr. Rich Samini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer, and Jets legend, Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
Here we are, Saturday afternoon, 5 days away from round one of the NFL draft. Here we are talking some Jets draft. Like I said, my guest is Antwan Staley, the New York Daily News. So let's bring him on the show. Antwan, how you doing today?
I'm all right, Connor. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Really appreciate you stopping by. We were talking pre-production about the big day for New York sports fans. We know you're a Carolina guy, so you're hoping those Canes can prevail. And I'm right there with you. Actually, I'm kind of torn because as a Ranger fan, I don't want the Islanders to really do anything, but I also don't want to have to face the Hurricanes in the playoffs. So I'm torn on what I want to happen. But you ready to get right into it?
Yeah, yes, sir. Let's do it.
So, Joe Douglas recently spoke to the media, and he made some interesting comments, whether it was the comment he made to Zach Rosenblatt about the quarterback factory type, and then also the comment he made about how it's going to be a dogfight for whoever we draft. And then he also made another comment about a tight end to Connor Hughes. So what were your just overall thoughts from that press conference?
Well, I thought the quarterback, the comments were interesting. I mean, that's kind of my thoughts too. I've actually echoed those like months ago when I was talking to
Mhm.
Jets fans. I was like, I don't care if you have a quarterback or not. Like, I'm a big believer of the Ron Wolf philosophy, kind of what they did in the '90s, where they had Brett Favre, and then they decided to still take Mark Brunell and Matt Hasselbeck and Aaron Brooks, and even though Favre was well established as their starter and won multiple MVPs, you could ship those guys off for assets later and then, eventually come across, successor, which ended up being Aaron Rodgers, coincidentally enough. But yeah, I mean, that was like a big thing too, as well. So between that, Zach Wilson also, still being in limbo, regards his situation there. We'll see what happens with that. There might be a situation where he gets traded the day of the draft. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that too, as well. But I think those were the two things as well. And also, the tight end talk too as well. How Joe Douglas said he loved the tight end room, but they're obviously interested in Brock Bowers along with other possible candidates they could take at 10.
Yeah, there's just I want to just touch on that Zach Wilson comment you made because I had Adam Schefter on the show right after the owners meetings happened, and when Douglas spoke at the owners meeting, he basically no when Woody spoke, he said if we can't trade him, we are gonna keep him. So I went to Adam Schefter and I asked him that question, and he said he does not see any way that Zach Wilson is on this team for 2024. But for me, it's really just about managing the cap. And Douglas said not Douglas, Schefter said the way that it might have to happen is we give up Zach and a pick to even get any sort of value or cut him. I can't see him on this team. And Douglas recently said Zach, quote, Zach's an asset, but we're still open to trading him. So I really don't want to see Zach on this team in 2024. And I agree with you. I'm all for it. I've said it all along. Drafting a quarterback on day 3 of the draft cannot hurt you. What could possibly go wrong with taking a flyer on a 4th or a 5th round type of guy? Or no, the Jets have the mystery relevant pick. Maybe they'll try to do what the Niners did with Brock Purdy and maybe take a Sam Hartman, someone like that, maybe a Carter Bradley if they're still there. But right now, I'd say my top guys are like Jordan Travis, Rattler, Pratt. Those guys I'd say are my top guys to target. But right now, last time we talked was when free agency, it was the Wednesday that free agency actually opened. And obviously a lot has changed since then with the moves we've made, how we're going to attack the draft. Right now, where do you stand? Do you think are you team wide receiver, Bauer boy, trade up, trade down, O-line ogre? Where are you standing right now?
I think it just depends on what the board looks like, and then the Jets can just play it from there. I mean, you're in a good spot where you addressed a lot of needs in free agency. You filled all your holes on the offensive line, at least initially there, and then you got Mike Williams, which also gives you some flexibility too as well to still take another wide receiver, but he's under a 1 year contract. Tyron Smith's under a 1 year contract. Morgan Moses in the final year of his contract. They're both 33 years old. So again, like does what they did in free agency does not preclude them for taking a certain player. Or and also I know they like Tyler Conklin. I know that Jeremy Rucker is a big part of their future too as well. But adding a guy like Brock Bowers would give you just extra security not only for Aaron Rodgers but also another playmaker in that offense. And we saw it last year where they were just very limited in that area where they were basically, especially at the end of the year, kind of just basically using a lot of Garrett Wilson and also Brees Hall in the passing game. But adding somebody like that who can catch contested balls and also, find holes in the zone defenses like Browers can do, and also has, exceptional speeds there, especially for a player his size. He's a little bit undersized for a tight end, but if you know how to use him, then I definitely think he could be a big asset. But I think they're a good spot either way. It just depends on what happens because I expect four quarterbacks to be taken in the top 10. I think JJ McCarthy is going to go somewhere, whether it be the Giants or the team like the Vikings or the Raiders or Broncos trade up on draft day and do that. And then that's going to push a really good player, maybe like a Roma Dunze, maybe like a, Malik Neighbors if you get lucky, or, you can also go with Brock Bowers at 10. One of those good players are going to get pushed down to 10, and the Jets are going to have an interesting decision to make.
I really agree with what you're saying. I think it's really hard to mess up in the situation the Jets are in. Like obviously the Jets. We were most of the Jets fans were hoping that we'd lose that Patriots game because we'd be higher on the board. But just looking at this draft class right now and trade up, trade down, stay, select this guy, select that guy, it's really hard for the Jets to go out and mess up this pick in fans' eyes. I really like Bowers. I think he fits win now. I like Odunze a lot. If Odunze's there at 10, you have to take him in
I
my
agree.
opinion. Like
I agree.
if he's there, you got to take him. But I definitely agree with what you're saying on how the board's gonna fall. Who's gonna trade up? I have a really good feeling. Maybe a team like the Raiders, a team like the Eagles, a team I don't know. The Eagles would come up for a quarterback, but a team like the Broncos, a team like that, Vikings, who'd want to come up and select McCarthy. So if the Jets want to get a package right now, I really like the idea of trading down to the 13 area with the Raiders, so getting Fatanu at 13. If Fatano, I think is how you say it.
Yes.
Fatano at 13, I really, really like. I think he's a solid piece. But you know, not too long ago, Connor Rogers put out a mock draft for NBC where he had the Jets selecting Fatano at 10, and he was all for the Jets just if they really like him take him at 10, but I really want to recoup an extra pick. I know in your mock draft, you had the Jets 1.0 at least. You had the Jets selecting Ricky Pearsall. And Pearsall, I think, is a really, really nice prospect out of
Florida.
Florida.
Yeah.
If you put I think you mentioned this in your article too. If you put him and Garrett on the slot with Williams on the outside, I mean that's just gonna be a nightmare for defenses. Like how do you defend that with the speed on the inside and then the deep ball threat on the outside? Plus maybe I don't know, maybe line Brownlee up on the outside or Gibson or someone.
And then you
So
also have to account for Brees Hall too and his pass
yeah,
catching ability in the offense as well. But yeah, I definitely think if you're able to get Fatano like there at 10, I think it'd be a good pick at 10. Like, and
mhm.
then if you can trade down to get him still, because I think he fits a lot of their needs. Because one, we talk about the Jets have been snake bitten by injuries on the offensive line.
Versatility.
Yeah, he's ultimately versatile. He's like AVT. He's like Aaron
Mhm.
Tucker, where he can play four different spots on the offensive line, and injuries are going to happen. So you just have to be mindful of that, and also proactive. That what if we're going to be ahead of the injuries this year. We cannot afford to be reactive when they do happen, especially in a season where jobs on potentially on the line, like for Robert Sala, for Joe Douglas, like they have to win. And the way we do that, the way they do that is, get a guy like Fontenot that can, play left tackle, play right tackle, can play guard if something were to happen to Elijah Red Tucker, for a third straight year. So yeah, I think definitely a guy like him would give you just the ultimate versatility.
Yeah, I agree. We need to fix that and maybe back that up because Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith are not going to play 17 games. They are just it's not going to happen. I say I think they'd probably play around 12 games. I think 12 games would be kind of around the estimate for Tyron Smith, probably, just considering he hasn't played a full season since 2015. I
Correct.
don't think this is the year where he plays a full season, but let's say the Jets just go out and Romo Dunze's there. They take him at 10.
Okay.
What do you think they do in the third round? I know the Zach Rosenblatt put a mock draft out around the same time that you did, and he had the Jets selecting Jaden Hicks, the safety out of Washington State. Safety, Jets really haven't done anything. Or maybe is it, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I believe his first name is Kieran, if I'm pronouncing it right. I don't know how to say his last name. It starts with an A, the tackle out of Yale. Could
Yes.
you see maybe that the direction that the Jets might go in? If Romo Dunze's there, they take him. Is it tackle or safety in round 3? What do you think happens there?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility too. I mean, you could even go, quarterback too if you wanted to that
Ooh,
early, because I think Spencer Rattler is gonna go in the third round. Like,
ooh,
I think the way he's performed in the pre-draft process, starting at the Senior Bowl and then elevating from there, winning the Senior Bowl MVP for the game, and it's to continue to climb. And I think, I initially thought he'd be a day 3 pick, a good one for the Jets, but yeah, I don't see that being an option at this point. I think he's going to go earlier than that now. I think like late round 3, because I think a lot of teams, if you don't get a quarterback in round 1, why not take a flyer on a guy like Spencer Rattler, maybe in second or third round potentially, like a team like the Raiders, or if you the Broncos, like somebody's going to be left out in the cold, and then they may not be fans of Michael Penix or Bo Nix. I'm a bit Michael Penix guy, but
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, it might be a team to decide, what, we like Rattler, we like the upside, and we feel like we can develop him into being a long-term starter.
Yeah, the second you mentioned quarterback in round 3 came on. I have a question for you now. Well, do you think Douglas there would be any way the Jets select Odunze at 10 and Penix at 72? Could you see that happening? Because I think Jets fans, I think it would kind of be a split decision. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if fans would be like, "Oh my God, what are we doing?" But I don't know if fans would be like, "Oh my God, this is an incredible move." I feel like the fan base would kind of be divided in half if they did that. Could you see that possibly happening?
If I mean, I'm gonna preface by saying I don't think Penix is gonna fall that far, but
Um,
if he were to fall that far, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about a guy. The only reason I don't think he's, some people are split on him being a first round pick is because of the
Injuries.
injuries. That's it. You look at the play on the field, you look at the tape, especially the last 2 years at Washington, he's been arguably the best player in the nation, or at least one of them. I mean, he puts the ball in tight windows, he gets it to his receivers, and you know what? He proved at his pro day he is mobile. He can move. I think that was a big question, especially with all the injuries that he's had. I think one of the big questions is, can he play with a clean pocket? I think we
Yeah.
kind of saw what happened in the game against Michigan in the national championship, where they put a lot of pressure on him.
And he's dead. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, so it kind of reminded me of like a guy like Tua, can
Hmm.
the way he handles pressure too. But you look at Tua and the career that he's had, he's an above average quarterback. So to get a guy like that in the round 3, yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, you definitely you run to the podium, you run the card to the podium if that happens.
Yeah, you mentioned like we were talking day 3 quarterbacks earlier. Obviously, you don't think Penix will be available at 72. Obviously, Rattler. Personally, I think Rattler and Travis are the two best options. I'm not too high on Pratt. I know a lot of guys really really like Pratt. Not too big on him. I'd honestly, I think Travis is gonna fall a little. And Travis was a name that when the Jets season kind of fell apart and people already started thinking draft before the season ended, Travis was a name that caught my eye and someone else on the offensive side of the ball, guard, who, hasn't been a ton of buzz around the Jets now, but is Zach Zinter, who
Oh
his name caught my eye immediately because of that injury, and he's gonna fall. You know, is there any way if the Jets, let's say we mentioned Fatino, they go Fatino pick 10, could you see them going with another tackle offensive lineman? Obviously, I don't think Zinter would be a third round option for the Jets, but maybe in like the Jets have two fourth round picks that they can do a lot of different things with. They can trade up. Rich Samini had a conversation with Will Parkinson about possibly trading up for Odunze to pick 8 that would take both of our fourth round picks. But we have two fourth round picks right now that can open the door for trading up. That could be an asset to maybe move up a pick or two. Could you see the Jets going maybe Fatino and then trade away one of their fourth round picks and get Zinter, or maybe keep both of their fourth round picks? And I think the best scenario with both their fourth round picks for me would be Zinter and Travis.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, yeah, I could definitely see. I mean, you could get as many offensive line reinforcements as possible
Yeah.
because, I mean, again, we've seen the worst case scenario for the Jets. Now, do I expect them to have 14 different combinations in 17 games again? No, I don't. But had you asked me this last year, I wouldn't expect the Jets end up having a worst case scenario with the offensive line like they did in 2022 as well, where they had 11 different players start on the line. So you just never know. You never know what the future may bring. So you want to make sure, again, be proactive, make sure when things happen, you have guys that can step in and play a lot of different positions. I mean, yeah, you just definitely want to take as many offensive linemen as possible, but especially if you don't feel comfortable about the depth that you have. I mean, sure, guys like Warren from Pittsburgh, who they drafted last year, I definitely think he could potentially turn into a starter at some point, maybe, but he's just not there yet. And then it took him a while just to kind of, get reacquainted, especially after his injury, and just kind of sitting a little bit. But yeah, I definitely think you want to have as many guys as possible. And I think Joe Douglas talked about that on Friday.
Mm.
That was one of the good things that did happen last year. They got a lot of guys, a lot of experience that normally wouldn't have had that
Yeah.
experience considering the situation that they were in.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. Now, what do you think is a need in the draft that no one's really talking about that you think that you look at and you look at this class and you're like, I really like this player or position group. Who should the Jets look at? Because just staying with the topic of offseason and position groups, I know there's still time, a lot of time until the season starts, preseason stuff like that. But the Jets had a really good opportunity to go out and add a big name safety for a cheaper price in this safety free agent class was absolutely crazy. And all the Jets really did was re-sign Chuck Clark, let Jordan Whitehead go. I mean, they re-signed Ashton Davis, which I thought needed to happen. Tony Adams and JBC. That's basically what our safety room's looking like. What's a position group in the class that you're like, the Jets could use some extra room in this position, and I'm really intrigued by this group.
As a couple of them. I think you look at the defensive side of the ball, which I know is probably going to
Mm,
make some people turn their nose up at me, but still think defensive tackle could be, possible need too as well. And we looked at the Jets last year, that was their Achilles heel, just stopping the run. And I definitely think try to get as many reinforcements there as possible. Just get a guy that can just, you know, come in, especially the way the Jets like to rotate guys on their defensive line. Having a guy in that situation, a guy that can help out with stopping the run would be beneficial too. So yeah, I think a guy like Brandon Dolphus from Oregon. I definitely think, we talked about Chris Jenkins. I mentioned him during the combine. Obviously, his father played for the Jets too as well. They're different players, but Chris Jenkins Jr. Is definitely a guy that can plug the hole and do a lot of different things on the defensive line. He can play tackle. He can also play on the outside too as well if you need him as well. But I think defensive tackle. I think cornerback could also be a position that they could take too. Some because you look at Michael Carter's second, like he's entering the last year of his contract. We'll see what happens with DJ Reed too as well. I do expect them to maybe do something with that. I don't know when that might happen, but again, he's in a situation where he's entering, final year of his deal. And then, you definitely want to have as many reinforcements as possible at the quarterback position. They love corners. I mean, I would take a corner every year too, as well, along with taking quarterbacks if I could. But yeah, I definitely think cornerback could be a sneaky need that the Jets could end up targeting maybe in round 3, maybe round 4.
Yeah, I really agree with the thing you mentioned about the cornerbacks. You can't stop developing these guys just because we have Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. Doesn't mean that this cornerback room is like, okay, we're done. We don't need to build around. We also have Michael Carter the second, who's on his last year of the contract. He is probably one of the best slot corners
Correct.
in all of football. So why not bring in an extra guy? A position room that I really liked in my mock draft, I had the Jets taking this player with Mystery Relevant. I had the Jets selecting Dallas Grant, the linebacker out of Toledo. It's like, because the linebacker room, I look at it right now, we have Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley. Those are the two guys we're really just going to see the most of this season. You look at Mosley, he obviously didn't have the best of years last year, and the Jets ended up just having him ink a new deal, push the money down, and he really developed Quincy Williams in a really positive manner. I know the Jets have Jamie and Sherwood and Zaire Barnes, but the Jets really didn't use those guys a ton last year.
Right.
So if we could bring in maybe another guy and a mystery relevant pick, I mean, there's no such thing as a bad seventh round pick. You're just trying to hope a guy can come in and crack the 53-man roster,
Correct.
maybe be like that Xavier Gibson, Jason Brownlee type of guy from last year. But I really like him. If the Jets were to wait for with the Mr. Irrelevant pick, if the Jets were to wait all the way and didn't draft the quarterback, I'd be fine taking Sam Hartman or Tua's brother. I think it's Talia is how you say
Yes.
his name, out
Yes.
of
From Maryland.
Maryland. And
Yeah.
then you also have a guy like a Carter Bradley, maybe a Keaton Slovis is there. I don't know if Slovis will be there, but you have a lot of different options to go directions you can go in with that with literally every pick in the draft. But
And remember, they're going to bring in undrafted free agents too.
yep,
Keep that in mind as well. So they'll have a rookie camp after the draft, and then they'll bring in a lot of guys and decide which ones they want to sign and which ones they don't. But yeah, it'll definitely be a group of undrafted free agents that's going to come in too as well. They also compete for to make up the 90-man roster because you need to make sure you get those guys in,
yep.
especially with the start of the offseason program, which now started last Monday, and then those guys are going to be behind the eight ball a little bit. But you definitely want to make sure you get as many of those good quality undrafted free agents as possible.
Yeah, the Jets are always a team that bring in a ton of undrafted type of guys, and that's what I love about with that extra large roster for that mini camp preseason. You can literally just take a flyer on an undrafted guy, have him play 1, 2 preseason games, and you like him, great. You could find a way, maybe put him on that 16-man practice squad, or
Correct.
you don't like him. All right, send him off. It gives you so many. You just try out different things. Like, I Brownlee and Gibson. I thought they both. Gibson obviously had a great first game of the year. I mean, this guy won a punt return after Rodgers went down. The stadium went from this to that. He did have, throughout the year, he did have some trouble returning punts, but I thought towards the end of the season he had a solid Chiefs game. I remember week 4. That's when they really started kickstarting that offense with him. But they did use him in the offense, and same with Brownlee towards the end of the year. Brownlee, I was at the Commanders game when they got off to that crazy start when it was Tony Adams interception, Jermaine Johnson blocking the punt. Brownlee ends up scoring a touchdown that game. So like you said, a lot of different directions to go in. But one more question before we let you go, Antwan. We're gonna end with a fun one. What do
Yes.
you think the possibility is of the Jets? Joe Douglas never ruled it out. JJ McCarthy's there at 10. See the Jets taking him?
Probably not, simply because I
Mhm.
mean you're going to take a guy that
Yeah.
you may or may not see develop, depending on what happens
Yeah.
in 2024. So you need to take players that I mean. I know the last couple of years I mean, with Jermaine and obviously Will, they taken guys where they were able to develop them a little bit. I think you need to take a guy, although you take an offensive lineman, they may not play it immediately. They are, I believe, they are going to play. That's what some people think. They're just going to sit the bench. But, knowing the injury history, especially Tyron Smith, they're
Yeah.
definitely going to play. But taking a guy like a quarterback, who's going to be the third quarterback on your roster really does you no good at this point, at least in the first round. That's somebody that you like a Jordan Travis, who I really do like. I really thought he would have been probably a third round pick had he not gotten hurt because it seemed like Florida State was on the path of making the college football playoff and getting in and, him continuing to elevate himself. But yeah, I definitely think, Jordan Travis will probably be the best case scenario at the quarterback position for the Jets.
I'm glad we both agree on Travis. Antwan, thank you for joining us. You got any final thoughts?
No, people can find me at just my name, Antwan Staley, on X and Twitter and all social media platforms, and also find my work at the New York Daily News. But yeah, I think thank you for having me on once again, Connor. I really do appreciate
Of
it.
course. I appreciate you joining me, everyone. Thank you guys for watching. As always, JTS, Jets, Jets, Jets.